Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight? For the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rocket's red glare, the bomb bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
If you'll remain standing, will bring us our invocation.
Dear Heavenly Father, Lord, we just thank you for this day. Thank you for all the many blessings that you've given our nation, and for a spirit of gratitude as we celebrate this Thanksgiving week. We thank you for our Rotary Club, its mission of service, and the opportunities we have to help others. Guide us to do your will. Grant us wisdom, compassion, and strength as we serve our community. Bless our efforts and keep us united in purpose. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Here to announce the death that we have today. And then declare us as God. Straight in Harris, still staying with us. Leslie Edwards and Kenneth Hodges. Eddie Warson, wife Ellie Warson. Brad Birdie, Briston Birdie. Jim Alexander, Ray Meadows. And Ricky Adams, Thomas Lee. Thank you guys for coming today.
Under announcements today, we need a big round of applause. We were able to elect 4 new members to the board of directors of the Waco Rotary Club. They are Brady Busey, Gil Span, Nacho Vasquez, Ken Curry, and Grayson Husky. Congratulations. Next, I'll have Chris DePruitt, who will bring us our program today.
Thank you, President Rosemary. Good afternoon, everyone. It's always good to come to my home club again. We have a good day today in terms of our congressman to speak. And he knows what we're talking about. This time of Thanksgiving, we have very many things to be thankful for, so I appreciate everyone being here today. He believes in the United States of America. He's a native Lakeland. He ended up graduating high school at San Antonio and attending Southwestern University. Afterwards, he went to work for Southwestern Bell and worked there for 16 years before running for Congress. He was elected in 1996, and throughout his 24 years, he has been an integral player in the Republican Party and has spent a decade in the Republican Party leadership. He's done many things. I'm not worried with listing everything there. But let's just say that he's also a family man. He has 2 sons of his own and 2 sons with his wife, Karen, or Stephen, with his wife, Karen. And they are just an outstanding family. We are lucky as Lakelands to have him as our congressman. So please help me welcome Congressman Pete Sessions.
Chris, thank you very much. As is typical in my world, practice is important, and you ought to know what you're doing. You ought to know your audience. You got to know all those things. Tom, good to see you. Brother, I'm glad that you're here. Brother Hodges, glad that you're here also. I will bring a farm and ranch news maybe if you want it, but I'll tell you what I didn't do. I didn't know that the slide would be correctly. So I'm now going to have my guest today, Vicki Mercer, who's our district director. Who's here? Somewhere around here. There's Jordan. Jordan, stand up there. Everybody see. Jordan, we should graduate Harvard University. So I'm now flying blind because I cannot see what's next. But by the way, Vicki gave a speech for me at one of the Rotary clubs here last week and told me, now, just so you know, Kay Paul's going to be here, and he is going to say, I guarantee you that I did a better job than you did. Little did I know that she'd make sure I could not see the screen. I know. But you go over and look at it and Kay Paul. So I'm just going to try and wing this thing. I have done this same speech 2 or 3 times, so I should have it down by now. What a delight it is to be with you. And Chris and Shanna both really touched on how lucky we are. And Eddie Morrison, or Ellie would be better at saying this than I, but I remember in 3rd grade hearing a story, not just about the Pilgrims, but about why we have Thanksgiving. And it was a time, as I was taught at Providence Heights, and it was Mrs. Coker, if you knew Mr. Coker, he ran the DA here in Fayetteville at that time. But Mrs. Coker talked about how communities would gather together in an agrarian society. And they would work together, they would plant the fields, and they would pray for rain, and they would do the things that were necessary to sustain their food. And then in the fall, they would gather the crops, they would can and do those things. And then the community would get together at Thanksgiving and give thanks for them being able to sustain themselves. In some regard, I think being from Waco, Texas, to hear these stories, I think it's important. I think it's important for me growing up to understand and have some insight about who we are, why we're the kind of people we are, and why things work the way that they do. But I will tell you that I will speak to you today, and every single one of you somewhere in your mind, there's going to be some bit of angst, some bit of, not fear, I don't think, but some bit about us that we're slightly consumed with things that are not working as well as we want, things that maybe have some bit of association with them about we don't know what's next. I want to tell you that we live in the greatest country in the world. And the United States of America is a very proud country and one that can sustain itself. But we're entering times right now that are going to change not just the world, but the United States. And I will tell you that I agree with President Trump in much, and I disagree with much. But my job is not to do things more than to represent you and have a voice that I think it tries to be common sense and gets us away from instead of fight to the fix. And this has been, the last 5 years have been very, very difficult. You know, I've served for 27 years, and I've seen a lot of things and watched our country move back and forth. But the bottom line is that things happen much more rapidly now. There is a new social media platform, and people have gone away from watching the same news and hearing the same thing. Everyone hearing what they want to hear and not making up their own news. And it seems like we're slightly out of control. This morning I received a notice that a man had been calling my office and talking to one of my staff members.
And it's not that he wouldn't go away, it's that he wanted to talk to me. That's perfectly normal. I have no problem with that. I picked up the phone, called him this morning, and it's obvious he didn't graduate from NCC. But he's here speaking. And what he talked about was that he thought that the Congress made a mistake in one big beautiful bill, where we took everybody that has a student loan instead up to $200,000. Okay. But that we grandfathered that now and said moving forward it will be a new level less than that. And he said, you're cutting off people who need it the most. And I said, that could be true, but President Biden gave out $180 billion that people took out a loan for, and he forgave it. I said, all we're trying to do is to figure out where that next level should be. That we cannot sustain where we are because we've got another $1 trillion out there. And $1 trillion in some respects is a lot of money. But he said, well, you need to change the parameters. I said, please write me an email. Get to my email, eagle@psessions.com. He got a little stunned that I would give him my email. But I said, that's my job. I need to listen to you. If you thought about it, please tell me what that level is. This is the kind of circumstance that I'm talking about. We listen to each other. It's okay if we disagree, but if you're going to call and have an opinion, I want you to be able to tell me what the answer should be. And what you're going to hear me say today and see is circumstances that we are dealing with right now in our country. On behind me at some point, we're going to show you where we've got our schedule, who we are. The schedule's changed greatly. She's going to show you that we had a government shutdown for a bit. We're now back in. I will be back in Washington for 3 weeks. This is important because both my Sunday school teachers are here, and I send them a copy of my schedule. For me to make a Monday vote, I have to leave here on Sunday, so that means I have to leave at 10:30. So Dr. Morrison occasionally reminds me, you know we have Sunday school at 9:30. I said, yes, sir, and I'm at the airport. So guilt by association, Dr. Morrison. We also have other things that you ought to be aware of, and that is that there's a redistricting that is taking place. And while this was done with great consternation, I will call it, of what happened here in Texas. A federal court last week ruled, a court of appeals ruled that it violated parts of the Constitution, and that was, that the claim was, is that this was done on a basis of race. And the new ruling that then came out of the Supreme Court is they put a stay on it, because we're in the middle of doing this now. I believe that they came out with a new mask in August, and it's very difficult if you wait 4 months before you issue a ruling. So that's where we are. I'd like to have Vicki show you, and she is, the new district. It's very interesting. We have gone from what is today, she doesn't have it up, but what is an east-west district. We are on the western edge of a 14-county district that goes south to Pflugerville, a good bit of Round Rock. You know where IKEA is as you go down I-35 into Round Rock. That is inside the 17th district. And then south to Pflugerville, and then east to Huntsville, further north and east, an hour and a half, to Lufkin and Nacogdoches in the background of the property. It was drawn as a way to cover a lot of rural area. We missed, which we had 5 years ago, Bryan College Station, that moved to another district, and now we have a new configuration. That's the current configuration that you're looking at. Vicki's going to show you the new one. The new one essentially goes from east-west to north-south. We will now move from Leon County east. We will lose all of those. By the way, we've got maps here. We can send them to you. But we essentially will no longer have those eastern counties. We're now going to go north-south. We'll go all the way to Johnston County. And these are really nice people. And Hillsborough, and we'll pick up the rest of Freestone counties. We got about half of it. We have that other map there. Well, Kate Paul's right, you do a better job than I do. We have a different change here, which is interesting. You can get your pointer on that, it show them Livingston County. What is now a district with about 960,000 people. We will, down in Livingston County, have more people than the rest of the district combined. Dice is a good term. It means lots of things politically to Chairman McClure and myself. But the good part is that we serve with honor and distinction and represent people. We've been out to Lockton 24 times each of the past few years. Each year we go to Nacogdoches about the same amount of time. We try and represent people and give them an opportunity to have a voice, a say. We're constantly in the car, that's not having air travel. But we are now going to change that, and Vicki has some of the maps right here. But it is going to be a distinctly different north-south. The second thing which Vicki would tell you is I-35 is a mess. It's dangerous. It is a mess. It's backed up. So you're going to see a really big that I put on Texas Park Transportation and others, just like I did 5 years ago, to finish I-35 in Waco. And, you know, they kind of dilly-dallied around. I'm not picking anybody, but they did not have enough people up and down Pleasant Fishburne first. And now, of course, then we exploded the new bridge over here, so we're back in it. I think it's important that you know that we had an election just last November, 1 year ago. And that election revealed a lot of things that I think seemingly you have to respect outcomes of elections, but this was so dramatic. It created an earthquake across the country in terms of traditional voting patterns. And those traditional voting patterns are up on the slide right now, and they talk about changes that were made, and we've now gone to this color code. It's not electricity, it's a color code that is of politics, and it's blues and reds. And you can see that there was a dramatic shift all across the country where there had been perhaps what we commonly call people who are in the middle, moderates or people in the middle, people that are either Republican or Democrat, but people that are independent. That represents on any given, almost everywhere, about 12% of people. About 12% are the people that make up the decision about where the election goes. Generally speaking, the country's a 40, 20 district split. But it has, over the last few years, gone a little bit higher than 40 to about 44 each. And so all the parties have grown and the people in the middle have dwindled. This is an indication about what happens when you have elections and the outcomes that we now understand. But what's interesting is while the president went rather overwhelmingly, Congress is still down to the difference of 3 or 4 people. And certainly the Senate reflects that. And that has put us in different times. I served when I was the chairman of the National Republican Congressional Committee. We were 40 back, and I led us to a 63 net increase, where we went up dramatically 63 seats instead of just a majority. And they operated in an entirely different way when you have a number of people who maybe said at any given point, they may not be able to do at work, they may, any number of circumstances today. For us to move forward, literally every single person in the majority, and a Republican, has to be there for us to move our agenda. It's been increasingly difficult to get everybody to want to show up and agree. It's put us in difficult circumstances with people who do disagree, meaning that we're more like the Senate, one person can stop the whole body. But that's the world we live in now. And there's that slide that Vicky was found. If you look down there in that orange, I call it down there, I'm respectful, but I call it Berkeley. That's awesome. It's right next to Austin. And they're trying to be more like Berkeley than Berkeley is in Austin, so I felt like that's fair. But if you look down there, you will see Milam County and Williamson County. And this is the proposal of the new district. Thank you, Vicki. That really helps a lot. I think it's important for us as we move forward to know that we're still dealing with a number of facts and factors that have a big impact on not just my behavior as a member, the behavior of certainly the president and others, but is around a lot of issues that are trying to be changed. With the one big beautiful bill, that could not be revenue, it could only be revenue, it could not be policy. And so while we could change the revenue figures around, we could not change the policy. So the fight that we just had was over policy. And people could focus on whatever they chose to. The big deal became talking about the subsidies that were added by President Biden a few years ago. And it's created a real firestorm, at least in Washington, perhaps here too. And I must tell you that I feel very strongly about this issue of the subsidies. It's important for us to understand that not many of us are on Obamacare. I was for 7 years. And when I was on Obamacare for 7 years, despite the name of the bill, Affordable Care Act, my expenses in health care doubled. It doubled in 1 year as soon as I went on. But what was the difficult part was Obamacare moves you to a $7,000 deductible that you have to satisfy first before you get to your $28,000 insurance policy. None of the 7 years that I was on did I ever use my insurance. I paid all out of pocket to meet my deductible. That is the biggest problem. And so when President Biden, some 5 years ago, was dealing with COVID, there were people who were out of work. There were people who were literally in trouble. I get that. You do too. The government picked up an increased amount of paying the deductible for people in addition to the copay. And what happened is that we have some 4 to 6 million people where the government pays their deductible and pays for their insurance and people never use it. But we pay it. So the insurance companies have about 4 to 6 million people that we pay their insurance a rather hefty sum because we pay the subsidies and then we're paying for the insurance. And so these darn Republicans said we need to do something different. Now, I will be the first to tell you my party has not landed on a solution. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassed, I disagree with it. But today I'd like to let you know what I think is entirely possible because I've been trying to do some bit of leverage that I've got for a model that I think that would be good for the country and good for people. And it goes directly to what would be about the shutdown because as you know, in January, we'll be in the same circumstance. It is important that my party come up with an answer that would not only be something that people can understand, but that people would believe, okay, I see what that is, and I'd like to take just a minute and explain it to you. If you're on employer-provided health care, which I have been literally my whole life, that means that generally speaking, there's a 70-30 split, meaning the employer pays 70, you pay 30, but the money that is spent by the employer is a deductible, it's a business deduction expense. And on the employee side, that is pre-tax. Meaning that I got my coverage, if I were not on this, I would have paid 30 cents or 32% less. If you do not have employer-provided health care, i.e. Affordable Care Act, or you're without, that means that you do not receive the same benefit that the government provides on a tax basis to people who have employer-provided health care. I proposed 5 years ago a new bill that says we would give every single family, adult, that is not on employer-provided health care, $4,000 for each adult and $2,000 for each child. That is $12,000. 5 years ago, the most expensive health care in the country was Kaiser Permanente out of California. For a family of 4, it was about $24,000. This is not Obamacare, it's a market that might be called, in our world, called Blue Cross Blue Shield type arrangement. This scenario that I'm talking about, that even exists today, would allow the federal government to pay in to the insurance company designated by a person that made a choice of what they wanted, $12,000, and then that family would pay $12,000. Receiving the benefit is very same or similar to what a person who has what I have, employer-provided health care. It would sustain the market that they would be allowed to have coverage just like what I had at AT&T, just like what others have at American Airlines, the federal government. And it moves it to a marketplace instead of where you're showing up out-of-pocket expenses that you're paying to meet a deductible. It means that literally $1, you have that opportunity. You have that opportunity to have a health care plan that you use day one, $1, and we have parity. Parity is very important in today's world. We talk a lot about choice, we talk a lot about a lot of things, but parity is something that has escaped our lexicon. So it's my hope that you will be hearing that these darn Republicans have come up with a plan. It is not designed for everybody. It is not designed to compete against Obamacare necessarily. For sure, if you receive health care for free by Obamacare, you can keep going to the hospital and stand and get an attorney sitting there 5 hours before they see you. Because it reimburses 50% less than general insurance. And so we will give people that top line number. They can show up without taking all day off. They can take their children. We think it's a better chance than an alternative. This is the kind of answer that my party needs to be responsible in producing. Do I think we can get there? It's a struggle. Do I want to get there? Absolutely. So I will join Eddie Morrison and start praying for these darn guys out there. People pray for our leaders. Please help us out. Let's pray for some wisdom. Okay, Vicki, what else do we want to talk about? We want to talk about a little bit about some of the continuing problems that you need to hear about. And I think you're big enough to be told the truth. And you can handle that. We spend about $6 billion a day paying for debt. We cannot sustain this. We have to do something about the spending quadrant. But we also, and if we're going to do that, we have to have employees that work for the government and go back to work. In January, the president issued an executive order that said, among other things, number one, if you don't want to come back to work, we'll incent you to not come back to work. You do not have to come back to work. You have to fill out a sheet of paper in the next 2 weeks, and we will retire you at the end of September. No need to come to work all year till the end of September. Point two, we now have a come back to work. All points bulletin, come back to work. But he recognized that there are people that have something that's called a reasonable accommodation. That had been the law of the land under President Biden. And the reasonable accommodation can make sense, but it was not making sense because we had more than 30% of the federal government that was not coming to work, were not on their emails and had never used their cell phones and had no communication. So, in January, this began, of course, it was a huge fight at AT&T, at Intel, and Apple. All of these companies then had to gather together and say, it's time to go back to work. Because the productivity, the esprit, and the ability that we had to get work done was imperiled. In particular, because I'm the chairman of government oversight, I have all government operations. I do not have the policy, I have the oversight. We found out in Washington, D.C., and Chris was just there during summer, saw it too, we went to the Ronald Reagan building. Less than 14% of people came to work more than 1 day a week. And you'd say, well, okay, we kind of get that. I don't, but we do get that. And that's the circumstance we're in. So the president came back and said, if you have a reasonable accommodation, you have to report to work at least 6 days a month. You have to come check in, you have to get the new news, they have to know who you are, we have to know where you're going to be. And as a result of this, upwards of 30%, maybe 40, but we'll say 30, if we don't have all the 30% of the employees of the federal government across the country do not go to work at all. They do not use their phone, they do not use their email, they have not responded. There was correspondence that was directed to them saying, you have to respond, you have to tell us where you are, what you're doing, under what circumstance. You pick where you are, but tell us where you are because we want to respond back to you. That was done in February. Here we are in November, almost December. And so plans are being made. You heard the president say he was going to go through mass firings. I did not appreciate that, but he said it. So what's happened is that we are in a circumstance now where we will, as the new year rolls around, people have abandoned the job. If they do not respond back, if they do not give us notification, if they have not chosen to respond back, and I can't tell you, probably in Waco, Texas, people would say, well, that's good. If they're not reporting to work, if they're not responding, if they're not using their cell phone, if they're not using their email, they're on government benefits and they're getting paid. But it means that this is the kind of part of law we're engaged in across this country. And it is, you say, well, 60% are showing up. Yes, about 60% are, but then we have the government shutdown and we're involved in that. Why is this important to you? This is important to you because for the 4 years that President Biden had this stay-at-home allowance, the government had between $350 and $500 billion worth of misdirected payments. What is the misdirected payment? So that you notice I carefully did not call it waste, fraud, and abuse. Misdirected payment is where using the services that the government has, you can go in and either change, update, or add yourself to get government benefits. Because there was no one at work, they put up with essentially a self-reported slide, and you would go in and tell them who you were, what you wanted, all the things about you, whether it resembled you or not. And there was not somebody that would be then checking that to say, sir, can you please tell me, you say you're 36 years old or you're 82 years old, you sound like you're whatever. And that went on, which is what Social Security, Veterans Administration, student loans and others have really a need to do. So if we do not have employees at work, we are going to continue losing, as we are doing this year, some $200 billion worth of misdirected payments. We're attempting to change that reasonably, but we still need people at work who can assume those tasks. And so we're going to be going into next year, it's going to be more this last year than we did the year before. We ended up spending this great thing is $400 billion for COVID. It went to people, mostly they've now figured out outside this country. They funded it outside the country and will never get it back. So, from a perspective of you as a taxpayer, you concerned about Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, subsidies, student loans, all these things that I've thrown at you today, government benefits. We are trying to take an individual approach to each and every one of these, get government workers back to work, and if they do not show, we're going to then quit sending them a paycheck. You and I both know everything ends up in court. There's disagreement about what's fair or not fair. Wish they moved away from Texas. So, Vicki, what else all there that I need to cover? Because I already lost you before we started. Okay, she'll go through the slide and let's leave time for anybody to ask a question. I've covered the things that I remember most about the slide deck. Oh, you want me to wear my glasses? What does it say, Vic?
We're on the Big Beautiful Bill.
Oh, Great Beautiful Bill. Okay. Big Beautiful Bill is important because it resolved the things that were revenue oriented, not policy, revenue. And the revenue of this country is very important. We learned many years ago. There's a level there, but when you lower taxes, when you incent people to work harder, when you quit competing against small business and business, i.e. depreciation, when you encourage people to do things, people in this country do that. Is it given to people who have money and make money? And yes. But it also means that you hire more people and that we have a robust economy. We are seeing now where an incredible amount of money is coming in. Our stock market has just taken off. And this continuing fight about you're giving money to billionaires. Yes, I suppose that people with money make more money. They spend more money. They hire more people. They do things. And I want you to know that we are in a circumstance in manufacturing in particular, not services industry, but manufacturing. And the president, in a way that I didn't think about, but he went to these countries that were going to BRICS. And he went and said to these countries that knew that they were teaming up because the American dollar was no longer honorable or sustainable. We could not pay back our loans. When you get to $38 trillion, you start questioning whether you're going to pay it back. And we have now brought in some $7 trillion, he has, some $7 trillion that would have gone to form new currency against the United States. They've now pledged that that money will come in here, that money is here, a lot of it's going to AI, a lot of it's going for these new factories that are being built. I can tell you, we could count them, but the number of new AI facilities is staggering, and they're all, or virtually all of them are coming to Texas. Now, Some of us have some balance about that. We only have so much water, we only have so much land. But I'm engaged in a very high-stakes battle right now that is called trying to play the middleman with us figuring out how we are going to, now here's where you want to go. Go to the Texas map. We are growing exponentially, and this map that Vicki put up has what's called the Texas Triangle. Some 80% of people live in that triangle, and that triangle is going to go to about 95 million people will live in Texas in the turn of the century. I won't be here, but our children and grandchildren will be. We have to understand that Texas is going to continue growing. We have to meet needs, but the next slide is going to show you is we have a need to double the amount of electricity that we have to make ourselves prepared and ready. And this is not just for AI, it is for thousands of people who live here. And Kate Paul will tell you this is a beast. Doubling anything on the size of Texas over the next 5 years is going to put a big burden on a lot of people. So this electricity hunt has been, generally speaking, one where you have seen tens of thousands of acres being valued for solar panels. Not all of you wander off the major roads here, which we do, 6, 7, and others, highways. They're taking prime agricultural land. They want flat, they want what's already cleared, they want something near major power lines, near highways, it's easy to get in and out of. And these darn Republicans stopped the subsidies for solar panels. Solar panels are not made in the United States, nor are the wind turbines. They are not made here. And it has caused a great deal of consternation. So we stopped the subsidy. So now all of a sudden, this money, this free money for 3 years with a subsidy that people would take and misuse now has gone away, and so people are saying, what are we going to do? So battery power is roaring back in the state of Texas. We're doing the company is trying to figure out how they're going to do, what they're going to do, and there's about $2 billion that is being put into those markets right here in Texas, stabilize and move with what we need. So that's part of the story, and Vicki wants to show you that you want to do the Tucker thing. I don't know whether you put that up there. Is Tucker on there? I want to show you just to end my talk today about, not to justify, and it's darn political, but it shows you the things that happened. In 21, President Biden started borrowing from the Fed to the government. We took out the loans for $3.2 trillion. There was no vote of Congress. It was just an agreement that the administration made. And I'm going to show this slide to you. Can you go for it, Vicki?
So in July, Tucker Henderson, senior legal counsel for me from Financial Services, went with me to Dallas to talk to the president of Dallas Fed, President Gavin. We spoke with him about the importance of moving the economy forward instead of the Fed paying in, putting $120 billion a month, which is what they've been doing for almost a year now. And we talked to him about real growth and real opportunities to move our economy. And I recall we had a conversation about our crazy. That's one of my favorite conversations that I had with Tucker Henderson. We did follow that up about 6 weeks ago with the chairman of the Fed, Jerome Powell. And Jay Powell understood very clearly from me, as the senior member of the House Financial Services Committee, that we believe it is wrong and bad for the federal government in putting $120 billion into the economy every month rather than people going to work. Is this political? Monetary policy is political. Is it common sense that they would back off? Well, that's what they did today. A little bit, but they backed off about $15 billion a month. So now they're only putting in about $105 billion. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time that the Fed, it is time that the White House, the administration, and Democrats in this building and right over here understand. Last night, there was a real earthquake in this country. It was called Virginia and New Jersey. The American people have fed up with socialism and big government. The government that is simply putting too much money to make our economy grow instead of the American people. Doctor, thank you for taking the time. Rick,
The next guy's a character that sits up and has a sign every day talking about money. This was done in 21. This was part of the ongoing evaluation that not only I, but others had about how borrowing that went from 9 trillion under George Bush, 13 trillion and 13. I thought it was at Bush was at 5. Oh, 5 minutes. Coach Howard, you see that? It's time to sit down. So what we're trying to do is to deal with the $37 trillion deficit. Okay, 38 now. If we had not done what we did with funding, with stopping the government stuff, we wanted 50 in 2 years. And it just becomes a bigger battle. Okay. Kate Paul says we have 2 minutes left. Who's got a question? Yes, sir.
You touched on AI.
Yes.
So here's the thing, that's a long control of the most powerful AI company globally. There's been several media outlets, especially a YouTube channel, came connected to the coverage that Jensen Long is ignoring. He's not putting restraints on companies that are giving technology AI to China that it's not allowed to have. Now we're allowing Jensen Long to come into Intel. That's a little scary. What is your thoughts on that?
Well, it is scary. The rules around this are more than common sense. We do have some that are available that the Commerce Department places for export control on these things. But we're finding all the time, we'll sell to South Korea, we'll sell to Germany, it'll end up in China. We're in a real race. So the real race is AI. What's the real race? The real race is everybody in here is old enough to remember the movie that was out of Seattle, War Games. When the kid was sitting there just playing. Well, now the amount of passcodes are trillions of digits. And some divide backwards, divide forward, divide, Korean. I mean, all these emojis, all these things. Their AI will click off about 400 million different combinations a second. And they will end up breaking into the unbreakable today. And that is when someone else owns you. You wake up overnight and everything we had is G-O-N-E. So it is important that quantum physics and everything else be included, being smart about this and protecting ourselves. But you need to, a word of the wise, we need to understand AI is of significance and importance from a national security perspective. But so is eating food. That's the crossroads where I spend a lot of time. Hope I did well enough to get invited back.
You did very well. You have a standing invitation. Anytime you're in Waco, you can come and see us.
Every weekend. Well, back
Well, you gotta go to Sunday school, and we don't do on Sunday, so. Whenever you can make it, I really appreciate you being here. I know that we all do. It's quite an honor to have you visit our club. I believe this is your second visit in less than a year. You were here in the fall, last fall, I guess.
Whatever I'm bringing.
Okay, don't worry anything, folks, we got it. I want to re-welcome our guests today. If you enjoyed today's program, you're more than welcome to join us again at a future meeting. We'll meet on December the 8th, our only meeting in December. We will have entertainment and cute Christmas music provided by the MCC Choir. So make sure you bring guests and relatives and grandkids and anyone that's available to come to that meeting on December the 8th. Now, if you'll stand, we'll take a four-way test. Vote is adjourned.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Still training? Oh, okay.
Take you around. Best of luck.